this session right now, and so it will be recorded and you'll be able to catch it later, hopefully, as well. All right, well, welcome. You guys are all here for the creating digital escape rooms and other interactive activities using Google Forms. So let me, okay, good, Tracy, I just saw your notes, thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna talk about a couple things here first of all. So I'll introduce myself in just a minute, but I am the only one that's running this webinar, so I'm actually monitoring the chats and the stuff that's coming through that way, as well as giving the presentation. So if I'm sounds like I go out for a minute or I get silent for a minute, that's likely what part of the issue is that I'm just kind of reading a comment that somebody put or anything like that. I just don't have a second person helping me out here. So let's do a little bit of an introduction so you get an idea of who I am and what we're doing, and then we'll jump right into why we're here, which is to look at these digital resources. So I work for the Arizona Game and Fish Department. If you are not responsible for who we are the state agency that is responsible for managing Arizona's wildlife. So there are more than 800 species of wildlife that are found in Arizona that we are responsible for managing. Most people interact with us through hunting and fishing. You buy a license and you go hunting and fishing, and that's typically where people interact with us. But we are actually responsible for managing all of the species in Arizona, not just those that you can legally hunt and angle for. Even though we are a government agency, we do not take general taxpayer dollars. We don't take anything from your state sales tax or nothing from your income tax. None of that comes to us. We actually operate much more like a business on what we call a user pay model. So it is the users of the resource that are the ones that are paying for it. In this case, primarily that comes through hunting and fishing licenses. So when you go buy a hunting license or you go buy a fishing license, that money is coming directly back to the department for the management of those wildlife species. We do get some other funding sources. The most notably is the Heritage Fund, which comes from the state lottery. So when you buy a lottery ticket, a portion of your that money that you just spent goes towards the winnings of the lottery, and then a portion goes to one of those programs is the Heritage Fund that was passed by voters back in 1990. We're actually celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Heritage Fund this year. And what the goal of the Heritage Fund was to do was to take some state lottery profits and put them towards preserving Arizona's heritage. So some went towards state parks for preserving sort of the cultural and historical heritage, and some went towards game and fish for protecting and conserving and Arizona's wildlife heritage. And so that's what we use a lot of our funding for some of our endangered species work and some of our non-game work. So a lot of our bald eagle work comes from the Heritage Fund, black-footed ferrets, Mexican gray wolves. A lot of that stuff comes from the Heritage Fund. In addition, our wildlife education program, which is our K-12 wildlife education program, Focus Wild Arizona, comes entirely from the Heritage Fund as well. And that's where I come in. My name is Eric Proctor. I'm the Wildlife Education Coordinator, so I kind of oversee Focus Wild Arizona, which is our K-12 wildlife education program. In that role, I tell people that I work kind of behind the scenes. My job is to offer teacher professional development, to develop resources, lessons, and other things that are going to help you as the educator bring wildlife to your students. So I don't go into the classrooms a lot. You won't see me giving a lot of classroom presentations. I do on occasion, but mostly what I do is here to support you in your role as an educator and help you bring wildlife concepts and issues into the classroom. I've been in that role for 15 years now. And prior to that, I was a former middle school science teacher. So I taught 7th grade science in both the Littleton School District over in Avondale and the Kyrene District over in Chandler. I've also been involved in a lot of other non-formal science education. So I've worked at the Phoenix Zoo as an outreach instructor. I've worked at the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. I've worked at the Challenger Space Center. So altogether, I've been involved in science education for well over 20 years. That's a little bit of an introduction. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping involved in this. You will notice by now that you don't have a microphone turned on and you don't have your camera turned on. I don't have my camera turned on either. I'm going to be the one that's primarily going to be talking here. However, that does not mean that you can't interact with me. There are 2 chat options that you have as a participant in this workshop, and you'll be able to answer questions. If I ask a question, you can type in your answer into the chat feature, or if you have a question, you can type it into the chat feature. So there are two ways that you can do that. I don't care which one you use. I'm actually monitoring both of them. So on your screen, somewhere on the little toolbar for this webinar, you should see a chat option, which is probably looks like a little chat bubble. You can put questions or comments into that, or also there's a Q&A box. It just says Q&A. You can put your questions or your comments into either of those. I don't care which one you type in, whichever one you can find, whichever one you're more comfortable in. That's how you're going to be interacting with me. So let's start first of all. So I'm just going to ask a very, very simple question. I just want to ask where you are listening from. If you can tell me where you're listening from, so what city you're in, and then we will just put it in either the chat box or in the Q&A box. And Lynn, no, you are not the only one listening. You just don't have access to see a lot of the other people that are involved in there. There's about 30 or so people on this webinar right now. All right, so it looks like we have people, a number of people from Phoenix. We have Gilbert represented, Surprise in Glendale. We have Casa Grande. Let's go through a few of these. Marana, Tempe, Snow Creek, joining us from California. Chandler. Let's see where else we've got some people representing. Cave Creek, Morenci, Tucson. So a lot of different ones are being represented today, and that's awesome to see. Make sure that I didn't miss anybody in here. Colorado is also joining us as well. So we've got a couple out-of-state participants, although I think some of those out-of-state participants may be local. They just happen to be out of state currently. Jason is coming on. Good. All right. So it appears that all of you guys can hear me. That was the biggest thing. And you can now understand how you're going to interact with me if that comes up. All right, so that's basically the housekeeping and the introductions. Let me now jump into what we were going to talk about. I want to first share the inspiration because I want to give credit where credit is due. Many of you might have seen this moving around Facebook. I noticed it last week on Facebook. It came across my Facebook. It was sort of a Harry Potter digital escape room. And I'm going to show it to you in just a minute, but I want to kind of give the context of it. And this is kind of where the idea for some of the activities that I just recently created came from, and where the workshop event, this webinar eventually came from. So a number of different people posted this Facebook post from Peters Township Public Library. What they did was they created a Hogwarts digital escape room, and I was intrigued. Now, I'm going to full disclosure, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, not because I have anything against it. I just haven't really read the books. I've seen a couple of the movies. I just don't know a lot about Harry Potter, but I was intrigued by the digital escape room concept. As many of you are clearly aware, our education system has dramatically changed over the last couple of weeks, and we are now looking for quality digital resources that we can provide to students so that they can learn from home, so that we can make sure that they're getting the learning that they need. And so Game and Fish, when we were looking at what we had as well, we were looking at what does this mean from our perspective? How do we support teachers in this role for digital resources? So I was intrigued by this digital escape room because I've been exploring this idea of an escape room for a long time. Obviously, they're a big recreational idea. If you're not familiar with an escape room, it's this idea that you get locked in a room with a number of people, in a physical room with a number of people. Some people you know, some people you don't. It just kind of depends on how many people are there. And then you're supposed to solve these little clues to get out of the escape room, and they time you, and you're supposed to get out like within an hour or so. Well, there's been an education movement recently, if you've attended a number of professional development conferences, of creating these sort of escape rooms in your classroom. And they're not truly like locking the kids in the classroom, but they're the idea that you create these little puzzles, and they have to unlock boxes and various things to get the next clue and to move on and eventually solve a problem that you're having to do. So when I saw this idea of a digital escape room, I was intrigued by it. So I clicked on the link, even though I don't have a lot to do with Harry Potter, and I just kind of made my way through the digital escape room. What intrigued me the most was that it had been done through Google Forms. And I had been thinking about the usability of Google Forms in different settings. The challenge that I face with Google Forms is that I'm not a classroom teacher anymore, so I don't have my own class. So things that I create on Google Forms, they come when they get submitted, they come to me, not necessarily, there isn't really a way for me to set it up so that you could take it as a teacher and bring it into your classroom. It just didn't lend itself to the best when you're in a third party environment like I am, trying to get that education out there. But I was intrigued because this is exactly what this escape room did. And so I'm going to show you the escape room here if you have not seen it already. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here. Let me see, where is it? There it is. So this is the escape room. When you click on the link that was in the Facebook page, it brings up this. Actually, I'm very interested because over the last couple of days, they've been making a lot of changes to this digital escape room. When I went on there yesterday to kind of prepare for this, they had a big warning message saying that Warner Brothers, I believe, was asking them to shut the escape room down after the coronavirus stuff had made its way through, because they were probably using some copyrighted materials or whatever. Well, when I went in today to just kind of check some things out when I was getting prepped for this, made some significant changes, and that warning message is gone. So I'm guessing they had worked with Warner Brothers, who have the rights to Harry Potter, and had kind of made some arrangements and made some changes to the escape room a little bit. So it's changed a little bit, and I'm sure it might even change in the future a little bit. But this is what you get. And at the end of this presentation, you're going to get an email from me, or you're going to get an automated email from the system, from the WebEx system. That's going to give you a certificate. That's going to give you a link to a certificate. And on that same link is going to have additional resource links. And the link to this escape room will be on there. So if you have not seen this through Facebook or other avenues, you're going to have the opportunity to get the link. You can see up at the top of my bar up there, it's a complicated link, that automatically generated link that Google Forms creates. But so I wanted to just kind of go through the escape room for you, so you kind of so you see what we're looking at. You can see that it has this introductory page, and then it has some information about what you are, where it came from. I've actually reached out to some of these people to indicate how I've been using their stuff. And then you click next. So again, this is just a public library created this, kind of in a similar situation to where I am. And then they have this information where you read this information. And the idea is that you kind of have been, you get stuck in this room digitally, right? And so you keep clicking next to go through here. Now you're locked in with your roommate, and they tell you, okay, you found this door that has a code lock on it. So you continue on. They tell you found this strange rectangle. I'm not going to read through all of it. I'm just going to kind of give you the context of it a little bit, but I want you to see how these things are working a little bit. And now they say you found this these little text bubbles that started to appear. And this is your first clue. And you're supposed to read through here. It talks about what books are you interested in, sizzling scales, magical maps, so on. So it has these little clues. And then it has this Dewey Decimal System. And so this is your first set of clues. How are the bubbles in this poster connected? So you're supposed to kind of decipher through here a little bit and decipher through here a little bit and try to figure it out. Once you figure that out, just like you would in a real escape room, that provides you the combination that you're supposed to try on the door. Okay. Now, I have gone through this, so I've tested these. We're not going to spend all the time in the world on all of these. You can go back on your own and do it a little bit. But if you were to enter in the wrong answer, for example, if I was to put in 1100, I just happen to know that 1100 is not the correct code, and I put in next, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me the door doesn't open. Okay. And when I hit next again, it takes me back to that same page that I was on, gives me the clue again, allows me to go through this, and now I get to try again. All right. Well, this time I happen to know the right answer this time, so I'm going to put in the right answer. And now it says, oh, you got through the door. Congratulations, it opened up. You keep going. Now you see a bright light. You basically follow the story through. You see a bunch of money. And now you see these scales, and you're supposed to figure out something with these scales. Now this is where some of the Harry Potter stuff comes in. It gives you some information about sickles and galleons and how they correspond with each other. And it tells you the first scale has 6 galleons in one of its tray. How many sickles should you put on the other side to balance it and make them equal? So this is where it tests your Harry Potter knowledge, and you have to go in there. And they do provide a link where you can actually go and explore that a little bit. I just happen to know the answer to this one again because I was on here earlier. I do that, and now it takes me to the correct answer and says the wall begins to rumble, the floor shakes, You take a moment, and now you have a second scale that you're supposed to do. Again, I'm going to put in the wrong answer again, just so you see how that works. I'm going to put in 1020. I think that's the correct answer. And it says, oh, nothing happens. I have to go back and check my math. I go through here again. And now when I put in the correct answer, it now tells me, oh, a door opened up, or a hole opened up, and I've now landed at desks in a classroom. I'm going to go through this quickly just so you have the gist of this. What I want to do is show you what happens when you get to the end. So now it's going to give you another clue. I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly. It tells you some spells. You're supposed to decipher how to use the wand. And I just happen to know this one here. Told me went through correctly. I'm now have gone through a port key, and now I've ended up in Alcatraz. A lot of this stuff changed recently. So now I'm in Alcatraz. I now have to escape from Alcatraz. There is a new code I'm supposed to put in. I'm supposed to use some clues. Again, gives me some story information. There's a black light. You're going to shine the blue. And then now here's a clue here. When you shine the black light on this map, these two arrows appear, one with a red arrow going up and a blue arrow going down. And then you have this information about US record low temperatures and US record high temperatures. Hint, there's a clue there. You're looking at Idaho with a red arrow up. I'm guessing that means high. And you're looking at South Carolina over here with a blue arrow going down, which I'm guessing means low, which will help you. So you use these little clues to come in here. And eventually what it's going to do is tell you, okay, the blue lock has 4 wheels to spin. Again, I was on here earlier, so I just happened to know the answer. And now it tells you the red lock has 5 wheels you need to spin. I'm going to go through here and do this. And now it tells me, oh, look, the door opened. I've went through. And now it tells me, oh, I'm now in a more familiar setting. And I've basically just I've escaped the room by answering the different clues. I'm going to go to the end here. It tells you there's a little thank you message, tells me some information. Now, this particular one, because it's a public library and they want to collect some information, they want to know a little bit about who was doing this. Notice they're not collecting any personal information. They're not collecting any student emails, which is the issue that I've always run into when I've needed to make things like this. They're just asking some simple groups. I'm going to say just me. You can mark an age. You can mark the state you're from. I'm just going to, we'll put some stuff in here. I'm going to put that I'm from Arizona. I was in here earlier. If you have any feedback for the escape room, you can do that. And when you hit submit, now that information is going to go in there. Now, this is what I was intrigued by as well. And you're going to see that I've added this part in here. The challenge is when you create this as a third-party organization, how do your teachers get verification that the students did it? If you are a teacher, you can have this notify you. You can send that the answers can be sent to you. You'll know which student did it because you can collect their email addresses or whatever it happens to be that you're collecting from them. You get that information. I can't do that in my setting. Right. And so there's not the student could tell you, hey, he went through this digital escape room, but you as a teacher wouldn't have verification. That's where this thing that says view accuracy comes in. What they've done is they've set this up as a Google form that is a quiz. It doesn't actually collect scores. But when they click view accuracy, what it does now is it brings up a whole nother website that basically is a log of everything that they did going through this escape room. So you can see all the different pages that they went through. It can show you where they got right or wrong. So it tells me that I went and did the wrong answer. It goes through here and tells me all the different stuff that I did. What you can do is this is what you could ask for as a teacher. You can say, once you've gone through, click the view accuracy and send me the link. You could have them copy and paste this link into an email, or they can print this out if they have the capability, or whatever works in your particular setting. If they're working digitally, I would suspect that they could just copy the link, put it into an email, or put it onto a Google a sheet or a document, and they could share it with you, or you could have them submit it on a Google form, whatever happens to be. But that would be the verification that they actually went through here. It does show them what the answers were, with what their answers were, so you can see that they actually did the work and they're not just printing out a page. So that's what I discovered, and that became the inspiration for what I wanted to create. And so now I'm going to show you what I've been working on for the last week or so. Let me go over here to series of digital learning activities. And I'm going to show you how I took those ideas and created these activities, and then I'm going to show you how I did it so that you have ideas for what you can do. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, by no means am I an expert on any of this. I'm trying to figure this out as well. But as you guys probably realize as teachers, sometimes the best way to show that you understand something and that you know something is to teach it to other people, right? So when I'm going through here and I'm making these, there are little tips and tricks and things that I discovered that I needed to put out there. And to help me remember that shows, hey, why don't I teach some other people about this, tell them what I've discovered about it, and then they can build on that, and you guys can build on that from your own experiences or what's going to work for you. I'm going to show you what's worked for me, tell you how I got there, and then you can figure it out for your own self. So in response to that Harry Potter escape room, I've created a series of digital activities. Now, you can see here I've created 5 of them. I have made my own page to go along with it. You can find this on our Game and Fish website now. And we have 5 activities. I've created these 5 in the last week. One on bats, one on migrations, one on skull investigators, symbiotic relationships, and tortoise research. Now, the advantage I had was that I was working with content that I already had available. If I had to create these entirely from scratch, then I wouldn't have 5 up right now. I would be, I'd probably have 1, maybe 2 up if I was building these from scratch. These first 5 were built from content that I already had. What happened is, and I'll show you this. We have a magazine that gets published, and a few years ago, in the magazine, they allowed me to do an education piece within the magazine. So there was a 2-page quick little thing where kids could read and they could answer some questions and do some stuff within the pages of the magazine. I took those pages and I created, and that's what I used as the foundation for these digital learning activities. So let me give you an example. I'm just going to go ahead and I forgot I was going to do this, so I didn't have this pulled up already. I'm going to go to my Focus Wilds website, and I'll show you how to get there at the end as well. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that right now. What we've done is, so this is the Game and Fish's K-12 education page, and we actually created a brand new learning from home page. So we've divided all this, we've taken all the stuff that we have and from other organizations that we think are relevant to wildlife and could help you in this virtual world that we're in now. And we've put them all in one spot. But the pages that I was talking about that came from our magazine are these activity pages called Focus Wild. And I don't expect you to know all this stuff. I'm just giving you a foundation for where it comes from. And you can see we have a series of these pages that occurred. One of those was the skull one. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the skull one. And the only reason I'm going to bring it up is so that you can see how it compares to the actual activity, because I'll bring up the activity that we developed then. So this is the little 2-page activity that was in the magazine a few years ago. 2011, so about 9 years ago, this was in our magazine. And so you can see there was some vocabulary that was introduced, there was some reading, and then they had to try to, in this case, they had to figure out which of these skulls was a canine and which was a feline. And then it gave them some information, introduced that. Then we talked about teeth. We showed some carnivore teeth and we showed some herbivore teeth, and they had to talk about the differences between them. And then once they've got all that information, I gave them this mystery skull, and they had to try to figure out what animal this mystery skull would belong to. So again, this was a copy, a paper copy that appeared in our magazine. What I did then was I took that information and I created a digital activity similar to the escape room that you saw. Now, I'm not calling them escape rooms because I'm going with a different concept, but how to develop them is the same idea. So that's what the skull investigator one is. I'm going to go ahead and access the activity. And when you do that, you'll see it looks very similar to what you saw on the Harry Potter page. I have this opening page, has some information, tells me, hey, welcome to this page. You come in here, and then you hit next. Now it starts to introduce this stuff. So this text here, I literally pulled right off of here. So it says, even though dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years, and you go into my skull investigator, even though dinosaurs have been extinct for many years. So I had information that I was working with, that I built, that I was able to use. As I design more of these, it's probably going to take more time because I'm going to move away from the content that's already been developed. But here's the same concept. You see those same pictures. So here I did the same thing, and now I've turned it into which, after looking at these skulls, which one do you think belongs to a canine? And they have the choice of skull A or skull B. Now, just like in the Harry Potter one, if you mark the wrong answer and I hit next, so in this case, I'm going to say skull B belongs to a canine. It doesn't, and we're going to show you why in a minute here. It says, nice try. Unfortunately, that was not correct, but then I give a little bit of an explanation. This time, think about cats and dogs you might have seen. Maybe you have even seen some as pets. What is the general shape of a cat's head? What about a dog's head? Does that give you any clue as to what the skulls might look like? So when I hit next, it brings them back to that question, and now they can think about it. Well, this one only had two options, so that if they missed it the first time, they're going to know second time. But the idea that we're trying to lead them to is cats tend to have a rounder face, and dogs have a longer nose, a longer snout. When they go in there, then that's where I'm going to actually explain that stuff. It says, oh yes, skull A belongs to a coyote, common species of canine. Notice how long the skull is. Basically gets the idea that dogs rely much more on their sense of smell than they do on their sense of vision. And so they have smaller eyes in relation to their skull, and longer nose. Cats, on the other hand, have a smaller nose. They don't rely on their sense of smell. What they're relying on is their vision. So they have these very large orbits where their eyes are. So they have highly developed sense of vision. So now we can go on, we can continue through. Now there's that same picture you saw in the book. Now it's saying, okay, here's a bobcat skull. Here's the bottom of a bobcat skull. What do you notice about the teeth? They get to go in here and say, well, what do you think these bobcats might eat? And so now we get to introduce them into, do they eat plants? Do they eat other animals? Or do they eat both plants and animals? From here, if they were to click on the right answer, it would tell them, oh yes, good job. Then it talks about the value of having sharp teeth and what they do. Continue on. Now they get the opportunity to compare what they just saw to a deer. It's going to tell them that this is a deer skull. What do they notice about the deer skull? What's different about it? They should not start to notice that there's more teeth, they're flatter, so on and so forth. They learn that the difference between an herbivore and carnivore as far as their teeth go. Now they get the opportunity to do the mystery skull. So we give them the skull, we give them the dollar bill as a comparison for size, and then they have these teeth and these teeth back here. And the idea is now, okay, based on everything that you've learned, what do you think this belongs to? Anybody want to hazard a guess on what they think this might be? You can go ahead and put it in the comments or in the chat or in the Q&A if you think you know what animal this might belong to. Your choices are an elk, a black bear, a mountain lion, or a Mexican gray wolf. You'll notice that two of these options, the wolf and the lion, are both cats. And so they're hoping that they pick up on the idea that a wolf skull should look a little bit like the coyote skull they saw earlier. And the mountain lion skull should look a little bit like the bobcat skull that they saw earlier. And then the elk, if they know enough about it, they would know that the elk should look a little bit like the deer skull they saw earlier. Okay. So you're going to go through all this different stuff, and let's say you got the wrong answer. Let's say you did not. Let's say it doesn't look like anybody put in elk. So I'm going to go ahead and put in elk. And I put in next, and what it's going to do is say, unfortunately, it's not correct. It shows a picture, though, of the deer and the elk so that they can kind of see that, oh, the faces of those are kind of similar. So because they have a similar appearance, their skulls are probably going to look similar to each other. So, hey, why don't you go back and give it another try? And so they give it another try, and eventually what we're going to find out, let's see, I've got some people saying, it's all over the place. A number of people saying black bear, a number of people saying wolf, and a number of people saying lion. So let's go ahead and let's start with the lion. See where that takes us. So now we've done, again, a comparison between the lion and the bobcat, that the skulls are somewhat similar. This is not the correct answer. Go back in here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the correct answer. This actually is a black bear skull. Black bears are omnivores, as we'll learn as we go into here. While many people think that black bears eat just meat, that's not true. And in fact, we take data from Arizona that shows that black bears, only about 10% of their diet actually belongs to meat. The rest comes from plants and berries and nuts and things like that. And so that's why they have the front teeth that are used primarily for meat eating, and they have the back teeth back here that are used primarily for plants. So now we've introduced them to the concept of omnivores, herbivores, and carnivores through the course of this activity. We go through the end and it says, hey, you've successfully completed this activity. So this one is not nearly as long as the Harry Potter one. It was just designed to be small. But again, you have the opportunity, your students have the opportunity to put in comments if they choose to. And once they hit submit, they're going to get the same thing that you saw in the Harry Potter one. So this is your opportunity. And I even tell here, hopefully your kids will read this, but we understand where kids are with directions a lot of times. If your teacher requires you to verify your completion of this activity, click on view accuracy and print the results. So we give them that option there. So if you click on that, now it just shows them everything that they did when they went through here. And that way they can at least see the answers. They could use that as notes. If they printed them out, they could potentially have that as notes for some of the concepts that were being taught to them. So that is one of the examples of the activities. And I have other ones out here as well. You can see I did one on bats, I did one on migrations, tortoise research, and symbiotic relationships. And I'm actually in the process of developing another one. I'm going to show you how that works here in a minute. So Christopher is asking if it shows whether the students get an answer wrong. I thought that the log at the end was supposed to. I'm going to have to go back and check that. They might have changed some features. It does when they answer, obviously. It tells them, I'm sorry you got that wrong, and it allows them to go back and try again. The log is supposed to. I'm going to have to go back and check to make sure that that is the case, that it shows them that they got it wrong, that they went back and they answered this, and so on. But that is a good question. You're going to have a little bit more flexibility if you are a classroom teacher, because you can have more power and control over what this looks like on the back end than I have, because you can actually have them send you the information directly to you. The results can be sent to you in an email and so on. Again, if you have questions as we go through this, just like Christopher did, go ahead and put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. I am going through those as we present to make sure that everybody is getting a chance, that I'm collecting everything. But I'm going to keep going on now. So now let's get to how do we do it. You've seen some examples, and again, you're going to have links to all this information. How do you do it? So that's where Google Forms comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and move to, so I have my Google Drive up, just as an example, in case you're not familiar with how to do this. I have a Google Drive up. If you're in your Google account, you go over here to the little waffle and you bring up the drive. If you're not anything, and then Tracy, I'll get your question in just a minute. It's a good question. And then, so this is my Google Drive. Now all I want to do is I want to create a new form. So I click over here to new, I go over here, I look and see now more, and I have Google Forms. Okay, so I bring up a Google form, and you get your basic form that you've created, and this is where you go through creating. Now, I'm not going to start entirely from scratch because I want to show you some key parts that I'm doing in here. So I just want to show you how to bring up the form. This is where you can start adding information. What I've been doing is once I created the skull one, I just copy that skull one over so that I keep the format pretty similar, and then I can mix and match. So I've already done that with another activity. So let me go into here. I'm creating a new one. I'm in the process right now of creating a new one called Wing Design, which is going to look at how we design aircraft wings off of how bird wings look. So different birds have different wing structures and wing design, wing shapes, and those are that way because the bird has it serves a different purpose when it flies. For example, there are birds that are very, very fast. They have a different wing structure than birds that are designed to be soaring up in the air for a long time. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating one that's based off of that, where the kids are going to look at different bird wings and they're going to think, okay, what do you think this bird does when it's flying if it has this type of wing? And then we're going to look at some airplane wings and we're going to compare those and say, well, this bird was designed to go fast. This bird flies fast. It has this type of wing structure. This airplane is designed to go fast. What type of wing structure does it have? And they're going to look for comparisons between the bird wings and the airplane wings. And so I copied the skull one. Actually, is this the skull one? Yeah, so you can see the skull one. So I've already started it. I've changed a few things. I've already called it Wing Design. I've already changed some stuff in here, but I kept everything. But you can see that the skull is still in there. All still in here on how it's designed. I put that in there because I want to give you an example of what this looks like. Because for some of you may not have a ton of experience with how Google Forms works. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the theme or this header up here. I want to do something different. I've already created a picture, so I'm going to go customize the theme. It says image uploaded. It says my header up here. So I'm going to go click on image uploaded, and I have all different types of pictures I can choose from, or I can upload my own picture. I just happen to have a picture already ready to go. So let me, it's this one right here, Wing Design header that I've already created. You can also pull photos from Google, things like that. So now I have this photo. Now I just got to remove it because it's certain size. I'm going to make it look like that, and I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And just like that, hopefully the picture will change, and now I've got a new header. Now I mentioned that I've been taking this information directly from another existing documents, and that's the case for this one as well. See, I already have a Focus Wild activity sheet that was designed with this in mind. So what I've been doing quite literally is taking and copying and pasting text right out of here. And then I make edits to it. So I'm interested, I've already done this first part here that covers 100 years ago. It talks about the Wright brothers and talks about them. That's already incorporated into my talk here. So this is the introductory page. Then what I've done is what you do is you create a new section. And so I have another section. You can see 100 years ago, Wilbur and Orville Wright, often referred to as the Wright brothers, received their first contract. So it talks about that first couple paragraphs was already put into here. So let's see how I did that. I had this initial paragraph here. I had this initial section. And then what you have on the side over here, I need to switch out some of my things here. Over here, then you have this thing here, which allows you to add different stuff. The key to all of this is creating sections. The sections are those places where every time they hit next, they move on. And it doesn't show everything in one big form. A lot of you may be familiar with creating forms that are just one long form, and at the end they hit submit. Well, when you create sections, that's where you give the opportunity for the form to be split up, and so it'll show a page, and then they have to click next to move on. But what's cool about it is you can create sections that are differential. So depending on how they answer a particular question, it sends them to a different section, and that's how you really have to play this out. So in this first thing here, what I can do is I can create I'm in this first paragraph that already came up. What I can do is here you can see all the options. I can add a question, I can import a question. I haven't really done much with that, but you can import it from another file. I can add a title and a description. I can add an image, I can add a video if I choose to, or I can add a section. So right here I'm going to go ahead and add a section, and you can see it just added a brand new section down here. Now, as far as navigation goes, this is the key part here is, so these are two separate sections. They will not appear at the same time on the Google form. They have to do something to get to this section. Usually it's just click the next button. But under here where it says after section 1, this is where it tells you, where you can tell it what is it going to do when they click on the next button. And now I can do, and you can see all the sections that I've created. I can send them anywhere that I want. Okay. Right now, it's set to go to the next section. And to illustrate that, I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is the development page. I'm going to show you what the page looks like in person. So if I hit preview, I go up here to my little menu up here and I hit preview. Now it's going to show me, notice it's just that first page. And it tells me next. When I click next, it brings up that blank section that I just created. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a difference now. Now, if I exit out of here, I go back to my design phase. Now what I want to do is, instead of it, when I click next, it going straight here, I can now say, you know what? Why don't you go to the congratulations page? So now when they click next, it's going to skip over all this other stuff and send them directly to the congratulations page. So again, I preview so you can see the difference. Here, I click next, and now notice it doesn't take me anymore to that blank section I created. It takes me to the congratulations page at the end. Right, so I skipped over all that other stuff. So that's the basic premise of how this is going to function. It gets really complicated, so I suggest that you find a way to keep consistency in what you're doing. Let me give you an example of what I've done with that. So I'm going to change this eventually, but you can see this was the skull one, and you can see I have the skull picture, and then I say, after looking at the skulls, which one do you think belongs to a canine? Now I can go in and edit this question by just clicking on the question, and it tells me all kinds of different things. Notice it's a multiple choice question. If you've never done this before, you have all different types of questions that you can do. In my setting, where I am at, I like the multiple choice questions or checkbox questions or drop down questions because there's a right or wrong answer. I'm not in a position where I can grade a bunch of people's essays or short answer questions and then send you the results. As a teacher, when you create this, you could create short answer questions or paragraph questions where the kids could actually write longer, lengthier answers. I don't have that position because around the state of Arizona. But this is a multiple choice question, and you'll notice I've marked it as required. If you don't mark it as required, then the kids could just hit next and move on. If they hit next, if they don't try to answer this question, but you've marked it as required, it will tell them, hey, you need to answer the question before we can go on. So make sure that's a key part here, is to make sure that you've made it required. Now, when I have a multiple choice question, right next to the required button are these three little dots. If I click on that, that's where it tells me I can add a description if I wanted to. So I could put a little descriptive paragraph in there. But this is the one that I'm interested in, is go to a section based on an answer. When I check that off, what it's going to do is it's now going to put up this information here and tell me, where do you want to send them? So now when they answer skull A, I now have my choice to send them to a particular section, provided I've had the section created. In this case, when they answer skull A, it takes them to skull 5 or section 5, which you can see here. This is section 4. This is section 5. So it tells them, oh, you got it correct, right? And the next one tells them, if they click skull B, it goes to section 4. Now section 4 now tells them, oh, you guessed skull B. Unfortunately, that's not correct. Now notice I've in the differential place here where it tells them where to go. When they click next, it sends them back to section 3. So they start back here and it takes them back to the question so that they get another shot at it. You will also notice that I've put the order you would think that I would put, oh, why don't I make this one section 4, this one section 5? What I've decided to do for my own sanity is I always make the right answer be the last section that I create. And so to give you an illustration here, as I go into here, here's 3 choices. In this case, the second choice is the correct answer. So when you go in here and you click on here, you'll see this is sending the first wrong answer sends them to the next section. The second wrong answer sends them to the section after that. And then the correct answer sends them to the last section. I just have chosen to do that out of my own for consistency. So every time I have these questions, the last section that I do will always be the correct answer. It may not be the last answer. As this case, this is the second answer that's correct, but I'm sending them to the last section. So I always know that the last section in my mind is the correct answer. And you can get that in there. So a couple things. I've had a couple questions here, so I want to make sure that I address some of these in here. Tracy asked, what software do you need? Does the user need to have this? They don't need anything other than a web browser. So your Forms, it goes out there as long as you share the link with them. Then all they need to do is click on the link and it brings it up in a web browser. There is absolutely no software that's necessary beyond just being able to get on the internet. And then Lynn, this might have been answered already in the course of the discussion, but I'm going to give an example of this. I know how to do sections, but how do you get choice of sections? And so let's just do a quick little let's go through here and in this section that I created, I'm just going to go ahead and give an example. So I've got an untitled section. Let's just do this as test 1. You can add a description if you want to. And now within this section, so I'm still in section 2. This is the title of the section. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a question. So now I've got a question. It's a blank question. It defaults to multiple choice in this case, but I can actually choose different ones. I'm going to stick with multiple choice, and I'm going to sit here and say, what is the square root of 4? All right, I've just created a simple question. And now you have your options. So now I can do option, and I can say the square root of 4 is 1. And if I want another option, I can now do 2. And if I want another option, I'm going to say 4. 1, 2, or 4. Now you'll notice right now it's not telling me. All it does is give me these different things here. It's not telling me to go anywhere. It's just allowing them to mark an answer. Again, I go here to these 3 little dots and I say go to section based on an answer. I click on that and now it popped up and tells me, how do you want to navigate these? So if they answer number 1, I click on continue to next section, and now I can say, where do I want to send them? Now, these are sections I've created. If you don't have any sections created, it's not going to tell you, you have to have sections. So my thought is, if I have 3 answers here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 sections. So I'm going to go ahead and go create 1 section, create another section, and create another section. So now I've created 3 new sections. And if I want to, I can even put the answer, you answered 1, and you answered 2, you answered 2. I'm not going to worry about correcting these right now. You answered 4. I've got caps lock on. That's the issue. So now I've just put those in there. So now when I go up here and I say, okay, I want to send these to a particular section, notice these now appear here. One, I'm going to say they go to number 1. If they go here, I'm going to say you answered 2. And then this one here, you answered 4. So now I sent them there. Want to make sure it's a required question because otherwise they have the ability to skip it. And now I can go in here and I can do whatever I want for number 1. And let's say here, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, that is not correct. Okay. Now, because it's an incorrect answer, I want to send them back to the question to try again. So I go here to continue to next section, and I say, go to section 2, because that was the section that was up here, section 2. Now let's try it. We can always test it. So I go up here to preview. Gets me here. Now you'll notice, oops, I got to go back and fix it. So you'll notice, if you remember up here, I changed this earlier to say to go to section 19. What I want to do is just say go to the next section. So it'll just send them automatically to number 2. I made that quick correction. Now I go to preview. I say next. Now it tells me that test question. What is the square root of 4? If I select 1, it's now going to say, I'm sorry, that is not correct. And when I hit next, it sends me back to the question. Now, if I do 2, I didn't go through and do these, but it'll now tell me you answered 2. Okay. And now that's going to probably send me automatically to number 4 because I don't have it navigating through. The reason it did that, I'll show you back. I'm going to close this out. The reason it did that is when I was on number 2, it said continue to the next section. So it continued on to number 4. What I would want to do here is say, oh, if this was the correct answer, I would now tell them, okay, I want to go to section 6. So it would skip over 5 and it would go to 6 and tell them there. Now, I had another question on here. Why is there a little picture icon on some of the section answers? Are those the only answer options that have pics included? Susan, I'm not entirely sure. All I did was when I'm not dealing with pictures that are in the answers. They have some options here where you can add an image as your answer. I haven't done that yet. You could explore that a little bit. Where I've added pictures is in these sections. So here, if I was interested, I have this section here called test 1. I could add an image, and all of this is included in section 2. So what I want to do now is add an image, and I'm going to pick it. So you can do a Google image search if you want. You can do from your Google Drive. I'm just going to upload from my computer, and I'm just going to give an example of a picture I created earlier. Hey, let's do these teachers doing telemetry, just for the heck of it. So now this image, and I can resize it if I want to. I click on the picture and I can make it smaller. I can even center it, so I don't like it being offset. So what I do is I click these 3 dots, and then these other 3 dots appear, and it gives me an option where I can change the alignment. And now I can say center align, and now it's in the middle. So this picture now will appear, this section will now appear with the title at the top, picture in the middle, and this question down at the bottom. Again, if we go back and we see what we've just done, you can compare to what we just had. Now I go here and notice the picture appears. So there's the title. The title's right here, test 1. There's the picture, and the question appears. And so that's how I've managed to work this. I can't speak, and that's how I've chosen to use the images. I can't speak specifically on a lot of the sections. Again, I'm not an expert on everything Google Forms. I'm just telling you how to work a lot of this in here. Couple other tips and tricks here. So I've got this one I started on here. Now, if I don't like this stuff anymore, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this section. I can just go ahead and delete the section, and this whole section is gone. I delete this section, all these stuff that I created before. In our little test sample, I've deleted them all. And so now I have the wing design, and now I've got that first paragraph that I started to take. I don't like this picture. This was a skull picture, but it's not related to what we're doing. Instead, we're talking about Wilbur and Orville Wright. So I want to get a picture of those two. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just change this picture out. So this is where the alignment was. I could hit change, and now it's going to bring this up. I'm going to upload a new picture. I just already have a picture created. Where did I put it? Oh, right here, the Wright brothers. I'm going to add this picture of the Wright brothers that I already created. And now just replace that skull picture with the Wright brothers picture. Now, again, this is a single image that I created. If you don't have the capacity to create pictures using Photoshop or other photo editing software type things, then you just find pictures that work for you online or that you have in your own library. And now I've added that in there. And now there's still the skull question, which I'm probably going to, in fact, I'm going to delete the question. So now all I have is this introductory paragraph that tells them to go to the next section. So again, if we preview this, there's that first introductory page. Now I've gotten rid of all that test stuff, and it has the stuff about Wilbur and Orville Wright. There's the picture I just added. The question is gone, and now I go to next, and it just takes me to the next one. Now I still have the answers in there, so I haven't deleted those sections yet, but that gives you an idea of how you're navigating through these different pieces. Now, you've gone through that. There's a lot that you have to keep track of. So I encourage you to make sure that you're doing section at a time and making sure that everything navigates correctly. It also helps to make sure that you have somebody who can test it and can run through it. Usually when I complete this, I go through and I hit every wrong answer. So I run the test myself, where I go through and I make sure I hit all the wrong answers before I hit the right answer to make sure that they navigate correctly. When I hit the wrong answer, does it tell them it's the wrong answer? And then does it take them back to the question? Then when I hit the next wrong answer, does it do the same thing? Making sure all your navigation works correctly. And then when I get the right answer, does it navigate to where it's supposed to go? So I do that, and I run through it on my own to make sure that everything is complete. And then I'm lucky enough where I have 2 kids sitting at home with me as well, and I have them run through it. And they get to go through it, whether they're right or wrong, and submit it and do all that stuff. So you can see I have all these different sections. This is the skull one. This will eventually change because I just copied the skull one over. So I kept the format roughly the same. What I like about that is it kept my initial page, the page at the top. I can keep that in the same format, so this stuff can stay the same. And then at the very, very end, it keeps my final page, the congratulations page. I just make a couple changes. I change it to say unknown skull and say, oh, you've just explored bird wings or whatever it happens to be. Keeps all the stuff the same, and I don't have to redo that. Now, how do you do the thing about the viewing the accuracy, which for me was a key part? Okay, so good question. So Zach asked the question, if you delete or remove a section, will it automatically renumber all subsequent sections, or will I need to go in and relink each answer? In my experience so far, when I delete a section, it automatically does everything else. So if I delete a section, it's going to, now the challenge will be if you delete a section that's being sent to, it might not know where to go to, so you may need to go into that question. So for example, on this, let's do this one here. So I have this one here, and it says, Bobcats eat plants and go to section 6. If I delete section 6, this might not know where to go, so it might just default to go to continue the next section. Let's try that and see what happens. If I delete section 6, I go up here. So what it did was it didn't know where to go since you took that section away, and so it just said, okay, continue to the next section. So I'm going to need to make sure that but you'll notice everything else renumbered. So now this one, which used to be section 7, now said it renumbered to go to section 6 now, my new section 6, because I've deleted section 6. So it does everything automatically. The only difference is when you delete a section, it doesn't know what to do with the ones that you've linked to that section. So I would need to go back in here and correct this and send it to another section. That's the only change I need to make. So it automates a lot of that stuff for you. So the last thing I want to show you then are because we're almost out of time here. And again, this was just a quick crash course. There's tons you can explore on this. But what you want to do now is you want to go into the settings. And so this, when you click on the little settings, the little gear icon, it brings up the settings. You have a couple different options. So this is where you as a teacher have probably more flexibility than I do. If you wanted to collect email addresses, you could do that. I choose not to do that because I don't want to collect a bunch of kids' email addresses and stuff like that. But if you're at a secondary level, you might want to be able to collect email addresses, and that'll give you some stuff. You can also limit responses to 1. That requires an email. They have to be able to log in. Do you want the students to be able to go in and edit after they submit? This is a general form setting, so all the form stuff. Presentation then is where you have some other options. Do you want to show a progress bar? I choose not to keep these ones in here, but what I do is I have this little confirmation message, which is a thing that pops up when they hit submit. So when they hit submit, this is what you can change. So what are they going to see after they hit submit? So you can tell me, thank you for completing the Skull Investigators Digital Learning. If your teacher requires you to verify the completion of this activity, click on View Accuracy and print the results. So that's where I can give them some additional information. And then finally, under quizzes, because really what I have done is I've created a quiz. If you want to get that stuff that says view accuracy at the end, you need to make it a quiz. And so I made this a quiz. And then what I did was I did immediately after each submission. So they release the grade immediately after submission. So they'll get the results as soon as they hit submit. And then what I chose to do, what can they see? They can see the missed questions and they can see the correct answers. So this is where it should, when there was that question earlier, I forget who asked it. Christopher, when he said, does it show if the student gets an answer wrong? This is where it should show that, is it shows their missed questions and then it shows the correct answers. I choose not to do point values because I haven't assigned point values to the questions and I'm not grading this, right? But as you as a teacher, that's where you could potentially assign those questions to have point values. I don't, but when I do these things, by selecting these things, that's where it gives me that view accuracy button at the end. And I hit save, and now it's ready to go. Now, when you're ready to put this out to the public, you've tested it, you've run it through the preview, that stuff, you have the send option. And this is where you can now, again, if you want to collect email addresses, I choose not to. This is where you can email the link directly to somebody. I just go to the link and I copy this link, or actually I hit shorten the URL so I get a shorter version of the URL and I copy that. And now when I go into my web browser and I copy that link that I just put up, it's now going to bring up that thing. So that is the lesson that I created, the activity that I created is under send. And there's another option there. You can embed it then on a website. So these are your sending options. The only other thing that I would show you if you're not familiar with it is the things that are called, so you can change your theme. We talked about that. You can change the header, but you can also change the background color, the text color, some different stuff here. I don't do a lot with that. I sometimes change the background color a little bit. Sometimes it'll do it automatically depending on what it picks up in the picture. So it does some stuff there. So you can change what this looks like to some extent. The only other thing that I will tell you if you're not familiar with this is explore the add-ons. Google Forms and Google creates everything at a very basic level. And then what they allow is other programmers to come in and create supplemental activities, not activities, but functionality, increased functionality of what the forms can do. So that's what these add-ons are. So I've gone to, again, I'm still in my Google form. I click on these three dots and I can click on add-ons. And through add-ons is where I can have the form do additional things. And you'd have to go in here and read what all these different things are. For me, the two that I use, not necessarily for this activity, but that I have found useful, is the form notifications. And what the form notifications does is it creates an add-on to your form that you could tell it to notify certain people when a form is completed. So this might be useful for you as an educator. Once a student completes a form, it could send you an email saying, hey, so-and-so just finished this form. Why don't you go take a look, and it'll give you the link so you can go in and see their answers. I don't do that in this setting because of, again, I'm not collecting the responses, but you could do that as a teacher. And the other one is form limiter. The form limiter allows you to limit how long the form stays open. And so I do this for registrations. If I'm hosting a registration and I want the registration to close on a certain date, I can actually shut the form down at a certain time. So when they click on the link, it won't work anymore. And you can put a little message saying, I'm sorry, the person who owns this form has closed it, or so on. So you can add these add-ons to that. They improve the functionality of your form. So I'm going to close those up, and you can see, and where you can find those later is once you choose an add-on, you would go to add-ons and you say, I want to install an add-on. These are like little Microsoft software pieces, and you can see I have a bunch installed, and I do different things. Up here in this little puzzle piece is where all the add-ons that you've chosen. So if you wanted to do notifications, for example, I click on notifications. It may not work anymore. I think there's a newer version of notifications, but let me try limiter. Oh, it doesn't work on, you know what, it probably doesn't work on this particular setting. I don't use these right now, but that's where you would find those. Usually if this works, what's going to happen is there'll be some information that'll appear on the right-hand side where it tells you, where do you want the email to go to? And things like that. So explore the add-ons, explore those different types of options. All right, so the last thing I want to show you then, so that's a very, very quick crash course in how to do this stuff, how to take that Harry Potter idea that we had, make and turn it into something you could use in your own setting. Let me go back here real fast. Just close out a little bit. What I wanted to do very quickly is just share with you, now is the time, we're just about done. So if you have questions that you still want answered, I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, but and I'll be happy to answer every question that comes through. Go ahead and start typing those in. While you're doing that, I just wanted to share with you, if you're interested in some other digital resources and how to create some additional digital resources, we have 2 more webinars coming up next week. These are next Wednesday, one at 10 a.m. and one at 2 p.m. The reason I put them on the same day is they're kind of a part 1 and a part 2 of each other. These are creating maps. So if you need a digital resource where you want kids to be able to explore maps and to be able to click on buttons and they can show different things on the maps, we're going to show you 2 different ways you can do that. The first way is by using existing data. So how do you go out there and you find layers, map layers, and you add them to the map that you're creating? That's going to be at the 10 a.m. one. And then at 2 p.m., we're going to show you one, okay, you've created that basic map. Now, how do you import your own data that you might have? So maybe you've gone out and your kids have been collecting maybe you took them out on the school grounds and they marked the locations of a bunch of trees on your school grounds. You got GPS coordinates and you did that. How do you get that into your interactive map? We're going to show you how to do that. So again, these are additional digital resources that you might be able to create with your students. And the registration for that is on there. If you need more information, you can always email me and I can show you how to register for those. You can also go to our the websites that are right there, and you can see, if you go to azgfd.gov/focuswild, you can go to workshops, and that's where you can sign up for all of these workshops as well. With that, though, if you have any questions, I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes and answer them, but it is now it's 2 minutes after afternoon. I told you to keep you here for an hour, so if you want to leave, feel free to leave. I'm going to mute my microphone for a little bit and give some people some time to write some questions, and then I'll pop in every so often. I do see a couple questions that are coming on. But other than that, when you exit out in about an hour, you're going to get an hour and a half. You're going to get a follow-up email, an automated email that will have the link where you can download the certificate for this webinar, as well as additional links. On that link, there'll be the link to the Harry Potter escape room, and then I'll have a link to the digital activities that I showed you before. So thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to go ahead and mute this. Hopefully you'll find a resource. Maybe you'll spend this weekend trying to create some new resources. If you do, feel free to share them if you think of something that might be useful. I'd love to see what you guys come up with as a result of this. And if it's wildlife related, maybe I'll post it to our stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the recording off, and then I'm going to mute my microphone for a little bit. So let me, and then I'll monitor the questions that are going to come through.